And another game from GMT. And in fact, our good friend Joel Toppin has recently been playing this and seems to like it. Of course, so Joel lives in Montana and it's cold all the time, so I don't know what that says. But what's the game, Toots?
Versailles 1919.
And did we get to Versailles while we were in France on our honeymoon?
I don't know.
No,
we did not.
Because it would be a huge palace. So no, we did not get there.
Didn't see any palaces.
In fact, we didn't get to Paris.
No, we did not get to Paris.
So we didn't see it. Now, what do you know about the Treaty of Versailles?
I don't know that I know anything.
It ended World War I.
Did it?
It ended World War I.
Okay.
On the Western Front, sort of. Well, it didn't end the war. It was the political machinations after the war. Now, the equivalent of this would be the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, which is far more onerous, but the Germans whined all the time about Versailles. So, new game. We will probably send this, my guess, to Dave Newport to review. Dave seems to like and do better with these types of games than I do. So, but as always, we thank our friends at GMT for the review copy.
We do.
And what do we say?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let me know when you're ready.
Ready.
Have we started, Miss?
Yes.
Thank you,
We have
Miss.
started.
I feel like I'm in my cousin Biddy at the moment. Hi folks, Versailles 1919, new game from GMT, and it is part of their Great Statesman series. Ooh, that sounds heavy, doesn't it? Alright, what is it? It is a game, of course, on the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I. Well, did it end World War I? Well, there's a question, did World War I ever end, or was it the second 30 Years' War that concluded with the end of World War II? Well, that's a whole different philosophical discussion and it's not part of this. But they made a game of it. And the back of it, of course, it says, ooh, high complexity, medium high complexity, but great solitaire playing. Well, we'll find out about that. But there's the game box. The game has various components. Of course, I always like player cards. I love player cards. Here, instead of making them big, they made them small. You have your uprising check card and your turn options card. So players have these, makes it easy for them to see what they have, and the card has, they're on both sides. One has turn options, one has uprising checks. So if you have one card, you got everything you need right there. One die. So for our friend Sam K, Sam, no baggies, only one die. There are event cards. 3 I pulled out here. John Maynard Keynes, who did more to screw up the world's economic system than probably anybody other than the Leninists. British Treasury representative. Man, this guy's mustache, he could be Freddie Mercury's father with this mustache. And it should be more than lose 1 happiness per deployed military for any card with him. Then we have Prince Faisal, the Saudi leader. And then, as an example, we have Marie of Edinburgh. I've never heard of Marie of Edinburgh, who's the Queen of Romania. Didn't know anything about her, so I will have to look her up. There are other cards, then, of issued cards, like the High Seas Fleet. What to Do with the German Navy, which was also known, a very good book by the same name, Luxury Fleet. Well, what are you going to do with the German fleet? Well, of course, they scuttled it themselves, and most people weren't terribly unhappy with it. Things like Togoland and Cameroon, who are still in the news today because they are unsettled. Ethiopia. The Italians want a mandate there. Well, that happened in the game. Constantinople. If you notice on this card, see all these little fists? Lots of unrest at Constantinople because the Turks want Constantinople and Prussia. Who gets Prussia? A strategy card, outlawing war. And I found this interesting because they speak to the Kellen-Briand Pact, which was 1926. So it's a little outside the scope of the game. It's within the greater scope of the game, but for the Treaty of Versailles, it's not truly in the scope of the game. Then we have our influence cubes. And on our game table, if you walk away from the game table too long with these out, they get swatted. I do like this. We have a scoring pad. It tells you strategy cards, the conditions that are met on them, national happiness. Makes it easy to keep score in this game. Of course, for me, solo play aid, since I play most games by myself. Then we have the counter sheet. Not many counters here. And they are more generic than not. Then, of course, the ever-important rule book and the playbook. I think I do kind of like it better, though, when you could play a game without having to have a playbook for the examples, because the game is either so complicated or has so many permutations. But some games work very well that way, some games not so much. The big mounted map board, you'll see this up close. Now, let's talk about the Treaty of Versailles. Niall Ferguson, who's generally a good guy, unless you're in a pandemic, and then he wants to go see his mistress, but that's okay because he's special and gets to be treated different than everybody else because, well, he's Niall Ferguson. I like Niall Ferguson, but Niall did not cover himself with glory during the Chinese flu here. There are two issues that really come to mind with the Treaty of Versailles, and what are they? Well, the first would be economics, because John Maynard Keynes would say that, well, it's all going to be economic. The next war will be driven on economics. Well, and he figured the first reaction would come from Germany. Who did the first reaction come from? Remember we talked about Constantinople? It came from the Turks. Well, what the Turks would do would be mirrored much later by the Germans. Now, what really happened, it said sometimes, and I'm reading from Keynes, that the Paris peace settlement was flawed because the United States Senate failed to ratify the treaty, or because of the harsh economic reparations in Germany, or the system of collective security was unrealistic. Yeah. The real issue, the most important reason for the fragility of peace was the fundamental contradiction between self-determination and the existence of these minorities. I mean, for example, he talks about the way some of these nations were put together. And Poland was mainly Polish. Then they get the port Danzig, which now becomes Gdansk. But the port of Gdansk is 90% German. So how do you think the Germans feel there? Is that any self-determination? And always licking my leg, and it feels so nice. The problem is one that these nations never ended up with a new collective identity, and so the Treaty of Versailles wasn't fully thought out. And hi, Ollie. Let's just move you right along. And I'll move a little to the side from all these butts. But we'll see how this all plays out in the game. And as always, we thank you, folks. And we're going to make sure that Ollie doesn't jump on Patsy over there. Thanks, folks. Bye. Folks, let's talk about the game now in some depth. Here you see the entire game out. It comes with everything you see here except for Black Man or Male Black Kitty. It does not come with him. Now, notice, of course, the insert box which I fooled around with. The stuff seems perhaps too much once the cards are out, except then you can put cards underneath these areas. They fit nicely. Now let's look at counters. Sort of the random generic counters you would expect for a political game. The largest one amounts you see are, of course, you would expect things from Germany, either containment of Germany, German trade, German industry, self-determination ones. But you look at the fleet ones, mainly the US, mainly Great Britain. And then you've got the cards, the chits or counters, I suppose, for both the British Empire here and the French Empire and the other minor empires. But so generic type counters, they're not unattractive. They are functional for game use, and you see the backside looks much like the front side. And of course, we also get a die with the game. Now, there is the solo player aid. All right, I found that to be pretty easy. Then there is a game scoring pad. So there's no question in your mind as to what's going on. We also have a playbook, and we also have the rule book or rules of play. Let me start with the rule book here. You've got the intro page, the components. The board location diagram is nice, but it's none of this is exceedingly intuitive right off. I don't think I would expect it to be, but it's nice that they get right into the cards right away in terms of the event cards, and then in terms of the issue cards. So it gets you right into the crux of the game right away within 2 pages. Very comprehensive playthrough here. This one is a 4-player one. Of course, here's the setup in round 1. And then we go on to other rounds. But it's a good setup. This is, I think, mandatory for this game. I think it's mandatory for these types of games. It makes life so much easier for the player. Here's one of those useful, what I call player type aid cards. You have both an uprising check one and turn options. And it makes it very easy for you to know, because rather than have big player aids cards, these will suffice, take up less space, because this thing already has a large footprint on your table. What I also like here, notice this nifty card. The Waterman Ideal fountain pen that was used to sign this. There are also strategy cards. Strategy card, and my favorite one out of all the strategy cards is the Winston Churchill contained communism one. And look at that, that's a young Churchill. Then there are the issue cards, and we kind of got that there, and you can hear Puppy over there at the water thing. And I like the various issues, like here, Rhineland. Does it remain with Germany? Does it become French occupied, or do the French annex it? What to do with the high seas fleet? UK control, UK secure, US and British split, or US controlled. Then the Sudetenland. These are just some of the various issues, and I like here that here it becomes the one where people get to decide. One of the major issues for Italy and Yugoslavia right after World War I.
And you see how important this is. And these faces are unhappy faces. This is level of unhappiness for folks. And then my last one, which is surprising, women's suffrage, which is supported by the U.S. and for the League of Nations Charter, the British and the French want to exclude it. Let's now look at the event cards. First we will look at is one of the ones I taught in a class in political science, Samuel Gompers, who founder of International Labor Organization. Gompers is key to the American labor thing. Military maneuver card, and there are 13 different of these types. Of course, this is the Bolshevik threat. Now, did you know that John Foster Dulles drafted the War Guilt Clause? Well, I didn't know that. I thought I knew a lot about this. I didn't know that, so I just got smarter. The father of modern Turkey. Now, good shot. And you notice that you have uprising up check and you add a powder keg to the Middle East. Various things get added by the play of cards. Here, Balfour, which is the Balfour Declaration, which made things much more dicey post-World War II for the British. And of course, everybody's favorite Hungarian, or not, Bella Cum. And if you don't know much about this period, the game's going to make you a bit smarter. Now let's take a look at the overall game board here. So let us clear things away and we'll look at the whole game board. Here's your whole game board, folks. Attractive? I think it's attractive. It works. It has a good flow to it after you read the rules. After you look at things, it has a good flow and the way everything works. And I suspect this is where the game engine really goes. We go from here over to here because, wow, the issues and then the deployment of your tokens. So, this is part of their Great Statesman series, and we'll see how it goes.